Chapter 1. The Contract. I always thought the first time would be different. Not like this. Not under flickering lights in a cold office, across from a man whose gaze felt like ice slicing through silk. But life doesn't care about dreams. Especially not when your little brother is dying, and the only way to pay for his surgery is to sell yourself. Literally. I sat with my back straight, hands folded on my lap like I was being interviewed, when in truth I was about to sign over the last thing I truly owned, my body. Across from me sat Caelan Fenric, the man people whispered about like he was a storm no one wanted to name. Alpha Lord, billionaire. Rumor had it, not entirely human, but I wasn't here for gossip. I was here for $250,000, wired directly to the hospital as soon as I signed that contract. For one night? I asked, my voice tight, though I hated how small it sounded in the silence that stretched between us. Caelan didn't blink, didn't smirk, didn't try to charm me the way a normal man might. His suit was black, crisp, tailored like it was molded to his body. His jaw was cut like marble. His eyes, silver, clear, otherworldly, stayed locked on mine, unreadable, and wolf still. He leaned forward, folding his hands. "One night," he said, "but you'll stay at my estate until I say otherwise." I hesitated. That wasn't in the original. I changed the terms. There it was. No apology. No elaboration. Just an iron tone that said you don't negotiate with the wolf when you're the one bleeding. I swallowed the panic rising in my throat and glanced at the contract again. His legal team had emailed it hours ago, but the printed version looked heavier here, weighted with more than just clauses. My name stared back at me, Isolde Fenric, 22. No next of kin aside from my little brother. There was a line at the bottom for my signature, and just above it, the cold, typed words. In exchange for $250,000, to be paid in full, Isolde Fenric agrees to offer her virginity to Lord Caelan Fenric. My throat tightened. He was watching me like a hawk, like a man who already owned me. "Why virginity?" I asked. The question escaped before I could stop it. "You could have anyone. Any woman. Why this?" Caelan's lips curled, not into a smile but into something darker. A flicker of something I didn't understand. "Because I want what's untouched," he said. "What hasn't been stained by lies, or cheap thrills, or men who didn't deserve it." His voice was low, calm, but under it was something else. Possessive. Almost primal. I should have run. I should have gotten up from that chair, taken my brother, and vanished into the world. But I didn't. Because reality doesn't care what you should do. Not when your brother's time is counted in weeks, maybe days. Not when the world is so damn cruel to the poor. So I took the pen. And I signed. The ink bled onto the paper like blood from a vein. An hour later, I sat in the back seat of a sleek black car, the kind that looked like it belonged to foreign royalty, my knees trembling under my cheap skirt. The chauffeur, silent and blank-eyed, drove through winding roads past city lights, into the kind of darkness that felt ancient. It was only then I realized I didn't know what to expect. Would he be rough? Would he hurt me? Was this just another business transaction to a man like Caelan Fenric, or something more? I didn't know. But I felt it. The moment we passed the high iron gates of his estate, my entire body shivered. The Fenric estate sat at the edge of civilization, nestled against the black pine forest like a sleeping beast. Stone towers, Gothic arches, and silence. So much silence it rang in my ears. The door opened for me before I could even reach for the handle. And there he was, standing on the stone steps beneath a cold moon, his silver eyes burning under the shadows. "Welcome, Miss Fenric," he said, his voice velvet and threat all at once. "Come inside. It's time we get to know each other." Inside the Alpha's lair, the inside of the estate looked like a mix between a luxury penthouse and a haunted castle. Dark wood, antique chandeliers, massive windows that looked out into a forest thick with mist. Caelan walked in front of me, and even his stride felt unnatural, controlled, commanding, like the house itself bent to his will. He stopped at a heavy door at the end of the corridor. "This is your room," he said. "You'll sleep here, eat here, wait here." I blinked. "Wait." He turned to me, and for a second the mask slipped. "You gave me your virginity. That doesn't mean I'm taking it tonight." My breath caught. "Why not?" He tilted his head, wolf-like. "Because I like anticipation, and I like seeing how long you'll last before you beg me to take it." My stomach dropped, His smile, if you could call it that, was wicked. "You belong to me now, Isolde, and I always take care of what's mine." Chapter 2. The beast beneath the silk. "You belong to me now, Isolde, and I always take care of what's mine." The door closed behind him with a quiet click that echoed like a gunshot in my ears. And then he was gone. I stood alone in the middle of the lavish room, my heart pounding hard enough to bruise the inside of my ribs. The silence that filled the space after his departure wasn't comforting. It was suffocating, expectant, like even the walls were waiting for me to move, to unravel, to fall to pieces. I didn't. I walked forward slowly and sat on the edge of the bed, taking everything in. The room was massive. No, opulent. A towering canopy bed with sheer black curtains. A fireplace lined in polished obsidian. Velvet drapes covered the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything smelled faintly of cedarwood, expensive leather, and something darker. Animalistic. My suitcase, the one I packed in 5 panicked minutes, sat untouched on the velvet chaise. It didn't feel like a guest room. It felt like a cage designed to make me forget it was one. The minutes passed slowly. Then hours. A silent servant brought me a silver tray of food, seared duck breast in pomegranate glaze, whipped truffle potatoes, and fresh blood oranges, without saying a word. I barely touched it. By midnight, the silence had thickened to something unbearable. I stood by the tall windows, gazing out at the forest. Pine trees loomed like sentinels beneath the moonlight, their branches whispering in a wind I couldn't hear. Far off in the woods, something moved, something big, a shadow, a shape, then howl, low, long, chilling. My entire body tensed. I stepped back from the window and closed the curtain quickly, the way a child might hide from monsters. But I knew better. Monsters didn't hide in closets or under beds. They wore designer suits and offered contracts with no expiry date. They smiled with perfect teeth and silver eyes that promised everything, and warned you not to hope. Hours later, I didn't know when I fell asleep, but I woke up to the feeling of eyes on me. Real or imagined, I wasn't sure. The fire in the hearth had dimmed to embers, and my skin prickled with a cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Then I saw it. A figure. In the shadows of the far corner. Just standing there. Watching. I jolted upright in bed, heart slamming. Who? But the shadows shifted. Empty. No one was there. I was alone. Or maybe not. I climbed out of bed barefoot and tiptoed to the door, placing my ear against the wood. Silence. Then, scratch. Something scraped against the other side. Once. Twice. Deliberate. I yanked my hand away from the doorknob. Is someone there? No answer. The scratching stopped. Then a soft voice came from the other side. Male. Low. Deep. But not Caelan. "You shouldn't have come here, girl." I froze. "What? You're not safe. He's not what you think. He's not a man. He's..." The voice broke off. Silence again. Then footsteps, several. And a second voice, this one unmistakably Caelan's, low and calm. "You'll regret this, Luca." I didn't hear the rest. The footsteps faded into the hall, and I stood there shaking. Not a man. Then what? The next morning when I woke again, sunlight poured through the windows. But it was cold, sterile. Like light that didn't belong in this place. A dress had been laid out on a mannequin near the fireplace. It was white, silk, thin, delicate. No bra, no underwear, no note. Just a silent command. I didn't want to wear it. I didn't want to obey him. But I also didn't know what would happen if I didn't, so I put it on. The silk clung to my skin like water. Every move reminded me that I was exposed. That this house wasn't mine. That I wasn't mine anymore. A knock. I startled. The door opened before I could speak. Caelan stood there, dressed in a dark charcoal suit with no tie, collar open, hair slicked back like a king at a coronation. He didn't speak right away. His gaze swept over me, slow and intentional. Approval flickered in his expression, but it wasn't kind. It was possessive. "Good girl," he murmured, voice like velvet wrapping around steel. "Come." I followed him barefoot, the dress trailing behind me like fog. We didn't speak as we walked. The silence between us had teeth. He led me to the back of the estate, through a pair of glass doors, and down marble steps into a lush garden that looked untouched by the world. In the center of it stood a stone table. On it, a wine glass. Red liquid shimmered within. "Drink," he said simply. I hesitated. "What is it?" He stepped closer. I could feel the heat of his body. His scent, smoke, pine, desire. His hand brushed my hip. "You signed a contract, Isolde. You said you were mine, so drink." I took the glass, fingers trembling, and sipped. It was wine. Sweet, dark, with something bitter beneath it. The world tilted slightly. My limbs tingled. What was that? He stepped behind me, brushing my hair away from my shoulder, and whispered against my ear, "Something to prepare you." My stomach twisted. Prepare me for what? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled me flush against his chest, his breath warm on my skin. "You've never been touched," he said, his voice low, "but your body will know me, and it will obey." The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered on the stones. I didn't even flinch, because I was too busy drowning in his presence, in the heat coiling in my gut, in the confusion and fear and dark fascination burning under my skin. I was falling, and I didn't know if I wanted to stop. Chapter 3, The First Touch. I don't know how long he held me there, against his chest, his breath against my ear, his voice sinking into my skin like warm ink soaking through parchment. It could have been seconds or hours. Time bends strangely around men like Caelan Draven. All I knew was that the moment I let that wine pass my lips, something changed. Not just in me, but in him. The moment the glass shattered on the flagstones, Caelan's arms circled my waist, tight, possessive, anchoring me to him like he was afraid I might vanish into mist if he let go. His fingers, long, elegant, claw-calloused at the tips, drifted over the thin fabric of my silk gown. I forgot how to breathe. "You're trembling," he murmured. "Is it fear?" I didn't answer, because yes, it was fear, but not the kind I'd expected. Not the fear of being used or hurt or broken. It was the fear of what I wanted, the fear of how badly I wanted his touch, even as my mind screamed to run. My voice came out hoarse. What was in the wine?" His lips brushed the side of my throat as he spoke. "Wolfsbane, just a trace, enough to quiet your instincts, to prepare your nerves for what's coming. You'll feel more sensitive." Sensitive? To me. Inside the manor, he didn't take me to a bedroom. He took me to his library. The room was massive, 2 stories high with dark shelves carved from blackwood, ladders reaching into the heavens, and windows stained with blood-colored glass. A fire burned low in the hearth, throwing strange shadows across the floors. Caelan led me inside, then turned to lock the door behind us with a soft click. I froze. "Why are we here?" He turned toward me, his eyes a pale glow in the firelight. Not silver anymore, but something closer to moonlight over snow. His shirt was half unbuttoned now, collarbone visible, throat shadowed with stubble, a man barely contained in his human shape. "Because I want you to remember it," he said simply. "Remember what?" "The first time your body betrayed your mind." He moved closer, slow like a predator, never lunging, never rushing, just that steady approach that made your heart stop in stages. And then he stopped just short of touching me.
"Take off the dress, Isolde."
My heart jolted. "Now, yes. But you signed the contract," he said, voice low, velvety. "But I won't touch you. Not yet." I blinked. Then why? His lips curved, more smirk than smile. "Because I want to see you, and because I want you to feel what it means to be seen." My hands trembled as I reached for the straps. The silk slid off my shoulders like water. And for the first time in my life, I stood naked before a man. This man. I expected him to be cruel, or mocking, or hungry. But he wasn't. He simply looked. With the stillness of something inhuman, his chest rose and fell slowly, nostrils flaring faintly. I shivered. "You're beautiful," he said. Not like a compliment, like a statement of fact. "But you already knew that, didn't you?" "No." His head tilted. "No?" I shook my head. My voice came out raw. "I've never been looked at like this before, because men are blind." He stepped closer now, so close his scent filled every breath I took. Smoke and pine and a hint of wild I couldn't name. "But I'm not a man, Isolde," I swallowed. "Then what are you?" He lifted a hand, slowly, so slowly, and didn't touch me. Instead, he hovered his palm an inch from my chest. The heat of it burned through my skin without contact. "You'll find out soon enough." My breath hitched. "You said you wouldn't touch me. I'm not yet." "Then why are you doing this?" He leaned forward, whispering near my lips. "Because your body already aches for it. And you hate that you want me." He was right. Damn him, he was right. Later that night he let me dress again. Walked me back to my room in silence. But before I stepped inside he paused in the doorway. And turned. Luca was wrong, by the way, he said casually, as if continuing a conversation we hadn't had earlier, when he said I wasn't a man. My heart jumped. I'm more than a man, Isolde, and that's what frightens him. He stepped closer again. His hand cupped my cheek this time softly. Like he was holding something fragile. Does it frighten you too? I whispered. Yes. He didn't smile. But he did nod. Good. You should be afraid. Fear keeps you sharp. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He kissed my forehead, soft, almost tender, but not innocent. Sleep well, little virgin, he whispered. Dream of me. And then he vanished down the hall. Back in the room I collapsed onto the bed, heart still thundering in my chest, skin flushed from heat I didn't understand. Was this seduction? Was it manipulation? Or something darker? I turned on my side, curled beneath the covers and pulled them up to my throat. The silk still clung to my body like his presence lingered in the air. And though I tried, gods, I tried, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said, that I'd dream of him. I did. But they weren't innocent dreams. Chapter 4. The Mark Beneath the Skin. They told me monsters hide in the dark, but the most dangerous one kissed me goodnight and told me to dream. I didn't remember falling asleep, but I remembered the dream. I was running, barefoot and naked, through a forest soaked in moonlight, branches scraping against my skin like the cold fingers of ghosts. Something was chasing me. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. Him, low breathing, measured, close, closer. Every time I turned, the trees shifted, the world warped around him. And then, suddenly, I wasn't running anymore. I was lying on a moss-covered altar beneath the stars. My wrists were bound in silk. My chest was bare, and Caelan Draven stood above me, eyes glowing that silver-white burn that didn't look real. He didn't speak. He just leaned over, pressed his hand to the center of my chest, and something seared through my ribcage, straight into my heart. A brand. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, like I'd been marked. Then he leaned down and whispered, "Now you can never belong to another." And I woke up, sweating, gasping, aching. The sheets were tangled around my legs. My nightgown clung to my skin, damp. My lips tingled like they'd been kissed. There was no one in the room, but his scent lingered. Cedarwood, smoke, sin. Later that morning, I stood in front of the full-length mirror, peeling off my nightgown, trying to shake the dream from my head. That's when I saw it. A faint symbol, pale, almost invisible, dead center on my chest, between my breasts. Not a bruise, not a birthmark, a glyph, faint like white fire. Curved lines and sharp angles in a language I didn't understand. I touched it. A low jolt ran down my spine. I gasped. What the hell? There was a knock at the door. I threw the gown back on, heart racing. Yes? The door creaked open. It wasn't Caelan, it was a girl, young, maybe 18. Pale gold hair twisted into a braid, soft pink mouth, eyes like dusky violets. She dipped a curtsy. "My name is Ellen," she said. "I'm to serve as your lady's maid. Lord Draven requested that I help you dress for your breakfast with him." The air left my lungs. "Breakfast?" She smiled faintly. "He said you'll need your strength." The manor had dozens of dining rooms apparently, but Caelan chose one that overlooked the cliffs. Windows blown wide open, the morning mist curling into the stone floor like fog in a cathedral. He was already seated at the end of the table, sipping black coffee. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his jaw shadowed with scruff, his tie discarded. And he was smiling, like he already knew about the dream. Like he put it there. "You look flushed," he said as I sat across from him. "Did you sleep well?" I ignored the question. "There's a mark on me." He didn't blink. "Show me." I hesitated, but there was no point in hiding it. The silk dress Elin chose this morning had a low neckline. I tugged it down slightly and revealed the pale glyph. Caelan's eyes darkened. "That didn't come from me," he said, voice unreadable. My stomach dropped. "What?" "It came from you." "What does that even mean?" "You're reacting to my presence." He stood, walking toward me slowly. "Your body is preparing, adapting, claiming you before I do. I didn't agree to that, you agreed to me." I stood too fast, my chair scraped against the floor. I agreed to give you my virginity, not my soul. He was in front of me in seconds, not touching, just standing close. His voice dropped, deep as thunder. They're the same thing, Isolde. I slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed. He didn't flinch, didn't move. He just stared at me, eyes glinting. Then something terrifying happened. He smiled, a slow, devastating curl of his lips. Finally, he whispered, "Some fire." I backed away. "You're insane." "No," he said softly, "I'm ancient." That evening I wandered. I wasn't supposed to. But the manor was too large, too silent, too filled with secrets. At the end of the west wing I found a narrow corridor with torches burning blue instead of gold. The air there was cold, stale, wrong. I followed it anyway. At the end of the hall was a single wooden door, carved with the same glyph that now pulsed faintly on my chest. Something inside it hummed. I reached for the handle. "Don't." I turned. It was Luca again, the voice I'd heard outside my door. Younger than Caelan, taller, leaner, brown eyes that flickered amber when angry. He pulled my hand away from the door. "If you open that, you'll regret it." "What's in there?" He didn't answer, but his hands trembled. "You're not like the others," he said finally. "What others?" "The ones who came before, the ones who thought they could survive him." I swallowed hard. "Did they not?" Luca's expression broke. "He keeps them." "What?" "In his memory. And in his bed." That night when I returned to my room, another gift was waiting. A box. Inside, a necklace. Not gold, not silver, iron, blackened, ancient, a note tucked beneath it. "Wear this when you're ready to surrender." "Not before." CD. I stared at it for a long time, then closed the box. I wasn't ready to surrender, but God help me, I was already falling. Chapter 5. The Wolf Behind the Door. There's a moment when danger no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a promise. I kept the box on my bedside table, untouched, unworn, like a loaded gun I didn't want to hold, but couldn't stop staring at. The necklace was cool to the touch, almost cold-blooded, not decorative, not pretty, but something old, as if forged in a time when symbols were power and metal could control monsters. And Caelan had written, "Wear this when you're ready to surrender." Surrender. Not consent, not say yes, not be mine. Surrender to him, to his world, to this slow, venomous seduction that was creeping into my bloodstream. I hated that a part of me, however quiet, however shameful, was already considering it. That afternoon I followed the paths down into the eastern garden. Caelan was nowhere in sight. Ellen hadn't come that morning. No breakfast, no escort. Just silence and sunlight and the sick weight of longing sitting in my ribs like a stone. The gardens were wild this deep. Overgrown hedges, silver-limbed thorns and flowers that only opened their petals when touched. It smelled like salt and earth and blooming. And there was a maze at the center. I didn't mean to enter it, but the arches were open. The stone path beckoned. And I needed to breathe, needed space away from the heat of Caelan's gaze and the pressure of wanting someone who could devour me whole. The hedges rose tall, twisting, tall enough to block the sun. The deeper I went, the quieter it got, until I heard the low growl, not animal, not human, but something between. I turned. A shadow lunged, and I screamed. He pinned me to the gravel before I could run. Not Caelan. This wolf was younger, messier. His teeth were too large, his limbs twitching as if his body didn't quite know how to be what it was. Dark russet fur streaked with ash, eyes yellow like boiled gold. It didn't speak, it snarled, it lowered its nose to my throat, and froze, sniffed, then whimpered. Its eyes shifted, slowly, from predator to recognition. It stepped back, its jaw twitched. The shift began, limbs cracking, spine arching, fur peeling away from human skin in agonizing silence. I fell backward onto my elbows as the wolf boy collapsed in front of me, naked, panting, eyes wide. He looked no older than me, a scar slashed across his collarbone like a brand. He gasped. "I didn't know. You smell like..." A cold wind swept through the maze, and he appeared. Caelan. Moving like a storm. In 2 strides, he had the boy by the throat. "Did you touch her?" "No, Alpha." "I didn't. She smelled like you. Like..." "Did you touch her?" The boy whimpered. "I just smelled her." Caelan's voice was a whisper colder than steel. That was enough. No, please, I didn't mean to. Snap. Not a broken bone. But close. Caelan flung him down like a toy. The boy writhed on the gravel, clutching his throat, sobbing soundlessly. Caelan turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something. Not lust, not patience, not even power, possession. This is why you don't wander without me. He didn't hurt me, I whispered. Yet. His voice cut like glass. But he smelled you, and now he knows. Knows what? Caelan stepped close. So close. You're mine. That night I locked my door. For the first time. I don't know if it was fear or fury that made me do it, but my skin still burned from the way he'd said it. Mine. Like a vow. Like a curse. And worse than all of it, a part of me had wanted it. I sat on the edge of the bed, the box in my lap. My fingers brushed the iron necklace again. That was when I realized the mark on my chest was darker. The glyph had grown bolder, as if it was feeding on something. Fear? Desire? Whatever it was, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Around midnight, the lock clicked. Soft, slow, deliberate. I bolted upright. But it wasn't Caelan, it was Luca. He stepped in fast, shut the door behind him, and raised a finger to his lips. Quiet. Don't scream. I backed toward the wall. What are you doing here? You're not safe, he whispered. No kidding. I'm serious. Caelan is changing, faster than usual. Whatever bond is forming between you, there is no bond. He stared at me. You don't know what you've done, do you? Selling your virginity to an alpha lord isn't just a contract. His voice cracked. You've started a binding, and once the mark completes itself. He stepped closer, gently lifted the edge of my nightgown to peek at the mark. His breath caught. It's already begun. I slapped his hand away. Stop touching me. Luca flinched. I'm trying to help you, Isolde. Why? Because I was supposed to be next. I froze. What? I was supposed to be his next offering. But when your name came up, he chose you instead. He never changes his picks. My mouth went dry. Offering for what? Luca's eyes filled with something close to grief. You think it's just sex? Just virginity? I couldn't speak. You're not a girl to him. You're a key. And once he uses you to unlock what's buried here. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. After Luca left, I ran to the mirror. I tore down the straps of my gown and stared at the glyph. It had spread. What was once a faint symbol was now branching, like roots, crawling outward from the center of my chest toward my throat, shoulders, down to my ribs. As if Caelan's brand was claiming more of me by the hour. I touched it. The jolt was stronger now. My thighs clenched, my breath hitched. I slapped my hand away, disgusted at myself. I couldn't let this happen. I couldn't lose myself to someone I didn't even understand. But just as I turned away from the mirror, a faint scent curled through the air. Cedarwood, smoke, and wild. He had been here. Chapter 6, Blood Moon and Thorned Lies. He said I belonged to him, but never asked if I wanted to be owned. When dawn seeped through the high stained glass windows of the manor, it was crimson. Blood-red light fractured across the marble floors and washed over the velvet drapes, casting the room in a surreal, eerie glow. My bed was empty, my chest was not. The glyph had grown again. This time it pulsed, a gentle throb beneath the skin. Not painful, but alive. I sat upright, covered in sweat, my gown sticking to my back. The air felt thicker, heavy with something invisible. Not heat, not magic, just presence. His presence. I pressed a cold cloth to my forehead, hoping to quiet the racing of my heart. But no matter how many times I tried to forget the way Caelan's eyes bore into me, or the way Luca's words trembled in warning, the questions still bloomed like wildflowers through cracked pavement. What was he planning? What did I become the moment I said yes? And why did it feel like something in me had already said yes long before I opened my mouth? I hadn't seen Ellen since the day I woke with the glyph. But that morning she returned, not smiling, not soft. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled open the wardrobe, eyes downcast. There's a banquet tonight, she said. Lord Draven has requested your presence at his right side. I blinked. Banquet? Yes. She glanced up quickly. It's the blood moon. The what? Her lips parted, hesitated. It's a lunar celebration. among shifters, very old, very private, usually held behind closed doors. She took a small step forward, her voice lower now. No human has ever attended, not until now. I exhaled slowly. That sounds like a warning. It is. Ellen crossed to the bed and unfolded a dress she'd brought, a dark red gown unlike anything I'd worn in the manor before. It shimmered in candlelight, delicate, sheer, and impossibly expensive. But what drew my attention wasn't the fabric, it was the pendant sewn at the collar. A familiar blackened iron chain woven into the neckline. The necklace. He had it built into the gown. I touched it cautiously. "Caelan," I whispered, "what happens if I wear this?" She met my gaze, no hesitation, no cryptic riddles this time. "You become his." Caelan bathed me in steaming oils that smelled like night, lavender, patchouli, clove. She braided my hair down my back and dusted silver powder across my collarbones to highlight the mark. I watched myself in the mirror, heart thudding like a war drum. My skin was bare beneath the sheer sleeves of the gown. My lips were painted wine dark. My feet slid into silver heels I didn't recognize. Every inch of me was trembling, not from fear, but from anticipation. Why? Because some traitorous, wicked part of me wanted to know what it meant to belong to a man like Caelan Draven, to be looked at like I was prey, to be consumed, to stop being afraid, and start being wanted. By dusk, the manor had changed. The great hall no longer looked like a room, it looked like a cathedral of shadows and smoke. The chandeliers dripped with obsidian crystals. A string quartet played hauntingly slow music from an unseen alcove. The walls were covered in black silk and flickering candlelight. Every seat at the obsidian table was occupied, except the one beside Caelan. He stood at the head of the table, tall, sharp, more beast than man tonight. He wore black, not a tuxedo, not a suit, but something ancient, stitched with silver thread that curled down his sleeves like vines. His jaw was clean-shaven, his hair brushed back, and when he saw me at the door, he didn't smile. He devoured me with his eyes. Every werewolf in the room turned to look. Some wore human faces, others did not hide the wolf inside them. Their eyes glowed gold, blue, red. They looked at me with hunger, all except Caelan. He looked at me like I was already his. He crossed the room and offered his hand. I hesitated, then placed my fingers into his. His palm was burning, so was mine. "You came," he murmured. "You gave me no choice." His lips twitched. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "you always have a choice. I just make the alternative unbearable." They cleared the room for us after dinner. No announcement, no ceremony, just instinct. And suddenly the string quartet began again, slower this time, darker. And Caelan took me into his arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. My breath caught as his palm settled on my waist and the other cradled my fingers gently. He leaned down and whispered in my ear. I dreamed of this. My voice barely escaped. "What? You in red, under the blood moon, wearing the chain." I stiffened. "You mean the one you forced into my dress?" His hand gripped tighter, but his voice never raised. "You don't understand what that chain means, do you? Enlighten me." He spun me slowly. My head swam with scent and silk and shadows. "It's made of iron mined from the oldest shifter lands, tempered in blood, worn only by one." "One what?" "One chosen mate." My knees almost gave out. He caught me. You said this wasn't about fate." "It's not. It's about choice. And I chose you, Isolde." My eyes narrowed. "You bought me." His gaze darkened. "And still, you make me wait." Later, after the banquet ended and the hall emptied, I followed Caelan through a corridor I hadn't seen before. Stone walls, carved doors, braziers burning low. We didn't speak until he opened the final door and led me inside. It wasn't a bedroom, it was a ritual chamber, and at its center, a stone platform with silver manacles. I stopped walking. He turned. "This is not what you think." "Then what is it?" He stepped closer. One step, then another. "I need to mark you, properly. Before your body does it without my permission." "What does that mean?" He raised a hand, and slowly, reverently, unfastened the iron chain from my gown. My breath caught. His fingers trailed the outline of the glyph. His voice was low, controlled. "Every hour this mark spreads. You think it's just me doing this? No, it's you. Your desire, your permission, your body knows who it wants, but your mind is still trying to run." He dipped his head lower, pressing his mouth gently to the mark. I gasped. It pulsed, so hard it ached. Tears sprang to my eyes. "I won't take you here," he said. "Not tonight, not like this." He stepped back, but his voice dropped like a dagger. "When I finally do, Isolde, you'll beg me for it." Chapter 7. The Beast Beneath the Skin. There are hungers deeper than the flesh, ones that howl in silence and bleed in the dark. I didn't sleep after the banquet. Couldn't. The scent of him lingered on my skin like smoke in fabric, clinging, heavy, inescapable. My gown, the iron necklace, the glyph pulsing under my collarbone. It all felt like a second skin I couldn't shed. I ran the bath until the tub overflowed. I submerged myself in scalding water, scrubbing until my skin turned red. It didn't help. Not when every time I closed my eyes, I felt Caelan's lips against the mark. The quiet reverence in his voice, the fire he didn't act on. He could have taken me in that chamber. He didn't. Why? Why did that feel more dangerous than if he had? I climbed out of the tub, wrapped myself in a robe, and stared at my reflection. The glyph was larger again, a spidery network of runes and lines now curled over my chest like inked thorns. Some shimmered faintly in candlelight, others looked unfinished, as if waiting for him. I heard the knock before dawn, one soft tap, then silence, not Caelan's style. I opened the door cautiously, and Luca slipped inside like he was afraid the shadows would follow him. He looked worse than before. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands twitching. Something wild throbbed beneath his skin, like he hadn't shifted in too long and his wolf was close to the surface. "We don't have much time," he said hoarsely. "Luca, you need to listen. He's not just choosing you for power, Isolde. He's choosing you because your blood does something. I don't know what, but the mark isn't reacting like it's supposed to." I crossed my arms, trembling. And how is it supposed to react? It should be dormant until consummation, until the claiming. It's not. I know. That's the problem. The glyph is feeding on something, someone. You think you're in control because he's holding back, but it's not that simple. Then why is he waiting? Luca hesitated, swallowed hard. Because the moment he takes you, the bond seals. It's not just a mating, it's binding. Irrevocable, even for alphas. Once sealed, it can't be undone unless one of you dies. The blood drained from my face. Luca grabbed my hand, desperate now. "You still have time. You can run. And go where?" I snapped. "There's nothing out there for me. He owns this estate. He owns this contract." He stared at me, heartbroken. "No. He owns you because you're starting to want him back." After Luca left, I didn't return to bed. Instead, I went to the one place Caelan never followed me. The library. It was a vast place. High shelves, iron ladders, crumbling scrolls. A forgotten sanctuary of ancient knowledge buried in silence. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe the origin of the glyph. Maybe the truth behind the iron chain. Maybe just something, anything, that would explain what Caelan wanted from me beyond my body. But I wasn't alone. He was there. Sitting in the far corner, book open on his knee, bare-chested and barefoot like some mythic creature waiting for a mortal to wander into his lair. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without looking up. I turned to leave. "Stop," he said gently. My hand froze on the doorknob. He stood, silent as smoke, and crossed the distance in seconds. "No more running tonight," he whispered. "I'm not running." He brushed a damp strand of hair from my cheek. "You're trembling. You're the one who put me in this position." "Am I?" His voice dipped lower. "Because every time you tremble, I feel it. Every shiver, every breath you hold. Your body speaks louder than your words ever could." "I didn't ask to be marked." "No," he agreed, "but you didn't stop it either." I slapped him, hard. The crack echoed off the shelves. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared at me like I'd given him a gift. Then, slowly, he held out the book in his hand. "Read this," he said. I looked down. The title was written in old tongue, but the image was clear, two figures entwined in light and shadow, a bond circling their chests, a mark blooming across their hearts. The caption beneath it chilled me, "The binding of the unwilling." Hours passed. I read until the candles burned to stubs, until my eyes watered from old ink and dust. The glyph wasn't random. It was a ritual, older than any known pack law. Forbidden in most circles, not because of what it did, but because of what it unleashed. When an alpha marked a human in this way, it opened a gateway, not to power, to integration. The human became part of the wolf's soul. They shared emotion, memory, pain, instinct, hunger. And if left unchecked, the glyph would not only bind them, it would make the human feel the alpha's desires as their own, not mind control, something worse, merging. I dropped the book, my chest throbbed where the mark glowed softly. I touched it, and Caelan's voice slid into my head. I never wanted to hurt you, but I can't pretend I don't feel it too. I gasped. He wasn't in the room, but I heard him, felt him. Inside, I climbed the bell tower to breathe, to scream, to figure out what the hell was happening to me. The wind cut through my robe, chilling the sweat on my back. The moon was high, crimson, watching. He didn't knock this time, just appeared behind me like a shadow cast from the moonlight itself. I told you, Caelan said softly, it would begin. I spun, furious. Get out of my head. I'm not in your head. You're in mine. He stepped closer, and I stumbled backward until my spine met the stone railing. His hand rose, but didn't touch. Hovered. Between us the air pulsed like it had weight. You're changing, he said. I don't want to. I didn't either, he said. But my wolf chose you the moment you stepped into that hall. And now you're becoming part of him. Of me. I didn't agree to this. You didn't need to. The moment you offered your body, you offered your soul. He reached out and traced the glyph with one fingertip. I gasped. The air went electric. I haven't taken you yet, Isolde, he whispered. I've held back every night I could have claimed you. Do you know why? Because you want me to beg? He smiled, bitter and soft. No, because if I lose control, if I give in now, this won't be a bond. He leaned in, lips nearly touching mine. It'll be a conflagration. And then, just as suddenly as he arrived, he turned and vanished down the stairs, leaving me breathless, burning, and completely undone. Chapter 8. The dream that wasn't a dream. Even when he was gone, he was inside me. Even when I hated him, I wanted more. That night, I finally fell asleep. But I wasn't resting. I was burning. The dream came like a storm, fast, dizzying, and violent in its softness. I felt myself lying in bed, in the manor, wearing nothing but silk sheets twisted around my thighs. The door creaked open. Footsteps, slow, heavy, familiar. He didn't speak, didn't need to. My body reacted before I could think. The air changed, charged with heat and something feral. Not lust, not quite. Something wilder, like instinct met want and decided to break me open. The silhouette approached, a shadow in the dark. He knelt at the edge of the bed, hands sliding over the mattress, the sheets, then me. I gasped. His mouth was on my skin. Not rushed, not demanding, savoring. He kissed the mark first, pressing into it like he was praying to it. His lips moved lower, past my collarbone, down my ribs to the softest part of my inner thigh. And still he never said a word. He made a sound instead, a low growl that vibrated in my bones. I moaned. I shouldn't have, but I did. Because even in the dream I wanted it. Worse, I needed it. Then he was inside me, not with pain, not with violence, but with a slowness that tore me open in the most devastatingly gentle way. His hands pinned my wrists above my head. His mouth never stopped moving. Whispers, kisses, bites that barely broke skin. I felt full, taken, but never helpless. And in that dream I whispered one name into the night. Caelan. When I woke, my legs were trembling, my sheets were soaked, and I wasn't alone. He sat in the corner chair, shirtless, sweat-drenched, breathing hard as if he had just woken from the same dream. Our eyes locked. He didn't speak, neither did I. Because the truth bloomed between us in silence, we shared it. It wasn't just a dream, it was real. A projection, a crossing of consciousness. A bond manifesting in heat and hunger and psychic intimacy that should have been impossible. I pulled the sheets tighter. Why? I whispered. He leaned forward. I told you. Once this begins, it doesn't stop. The mark feeds on need, on desire. It grows stronger each time we suppress it. You were in my mind. You let me in. I didn't mean to, but you wanted to. I felt sick, not because it wasn't true, because everything in my body ached for more of what the dream gave me. Even if my soul screamed in confusion, he stood, took one step toward me, then another. I didn't back away, didn't even flinch. Because for the first time since entering this manor, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a woman in the jaws of something she secretly wanted to be devoured by. "I can't keep holding back," he said quietly. "Then don't," I whispered. He stopped in front of me. My breath caught, and just when I thought he'd grab me, slam me to the mattress and finish what the dream started, he kissed me. But not like in the dream. Soft, careful, fragile. His lips barely moved against mine. He trembled. His hands stayed at his sides. He was kissing me like I was something holy, something breakable. I kissed him back, and the world stopped. The glyph exploded in heat. The iron necklace burned where it touched skin, and just as his hand finally touched my cheek, he jerked away, eyes wide, as if he'd seen something behind mine that terrified him. "I can't," he growled. "Not yet." "Why?" I gasped. "You said, because it's too soon. Because if I take you tonight, I won't stop. I'll keep you, bind you, and I'll never let you go." I stared at him, heart breaking open. "Isn't that what you wanted?" He shook his head, and his voice was a whisper of ash and regret. "Not like this." Caelan's confession, POV switch. Caelan, I couldn't breathe. Not with her taste on my lips. Not with the mark glowing like wildfire between us. She didn't understand what she was becoming. What we both were becoming. When I touched her in that dream, I felt the wolf stir with something ancient. Not just mating. Not just claiming. Imprinting. It was myth. Old superstition. No modern alpha believed in it anymore. But it was happening. Not chosen. Not planned. And certainly not safe. I had told myself she was just a contract, just a virgin body with a soul I'd never have to understand. But now I was watching her sleep, terrified of what I'd done. Because I didn't just want her, I needed her. And need was dangerous, especially for a beast like me. The gift later that day, I received a parcel on my bed. Wrapped in black velvet, sealed with wax. Caelan's symbol. I opened it slowly. Inside was a book, old, bound in worn leather. On the first page, a note in Caelan's handwriting: "If I vanish, read this. If I return, forget it. But either way, this is the truth of what I am." My hands trembled as I turned the page, because what I found wasn't just a journal. It was a confession. Of who he used to be, of what he'd done, of the blood he carried in his hands, and the curse he feared would be passed to me if we ever completed the bond. And for the first time since entering Caelan's world, I realized I wasn't just bound to the Alpha Lord. I was bound to a haunted man. And monsters never sleep easy. Chapter 9. The Journal of Wolves and Ashes. Some men are made of fire, others of hunger, but he was made of both. And that is what scared me the most. The book lay in my lap like a confession sealed in flesh. Caelan's journal was older than it looked. The pages had the smell of pine and ash, the spine cracked in places where the ink bled like reopened wounds. It didn't begin like a normal journal. No date, no cheerful greeting. Just one sentence, written in angry, scrawled ink. "If you're reading this, it means I've let you close enough to destroy me." I hesitated. My fingers trembled as I turned the page. The next entry was shorter. I was 14 when I first shifted. Most alphas shift at 16, but I didn't. Mine came earlier, violent, bloody, uncontrolled. I exhaled slowly, eyes dragging over the next line. "I killed my father that night. My blood went cold." The words were blunt, bare, not dressed in apology or pity, but I could feel the weight of the shame between the lines. Caelan hadn't written for forgiveness. He'd written to warn me. The next entries bled together in a mix of images, memories, and fragmented pain. Him, still a teenager, locking himself in the basement for 3 nights of every full moon. The pack elders, whispering about putting him down before he became a rabid alpha. His mother, who tried to protect him until she disappeared one winter after refusing to hand him over for execution. The solitude, the silence, the control he forced on himself every day since. Never letting himself love, never letting himself lose control again. I've never taken a mate, never shared a bed longer than one night. Until you. And now, I feel the storm again. I close the book with shaking hands. Tears slip down my cheeks. Quiet, hot, and confusing, because even after everything, even knowing the beast he once was, my first instinct wasn't fear, it was empathy. And maybe something worse, something dangerous, longing. The next morning, the manor felt different. The staff avoided eye contact. Luca was gone. The halls, once loud with whispers and movement, were quiet as death, and Caelan, he hadn't returned, not to the room, not to me. The mark on my chest pulsed faintly, like a lantern flickering low. Not painful, just hollow. As if a piece of me had gone with him. I didn't eat, I didn't bathe. I stayed in his library, staring at the entry over and over until the words blurred into ghosts. He killed his father. He lost his mother. He locked his wolf in a cage, and I was unlocking it. Was this what he feared? Not the bond, not the glyph, but me. By dusk, the silence broke, with screaming. I was in the greenhouse when it happened, trying to calm myself with the scent of crushed basil and night-blooming jasmine. The glass panes above trembled with the noise, screams, shouts, growling, and one single gunshot. I ran. By the time I reached the entrance hall, blood smeared the floor. 2 guards lay unconscious. Another was propped against the wall, clutching his ribs, eyes wild with panic. He came back. He gasped. "Caelan?" He shook his head. "No, the rogue, the one from the West Forest." My heart dropped. A rogue wolf on the estate? How did he get past the wards? He had her scent. I froze. Mine? The guard didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because from the shattered front doors, a figure appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, cloaked in a coat of dark fur and crimson eyes. Not Caelan, not a guard, a stranger, a rogue alpha. And he was looking directly at me. "You're smaller than I expected," he said, voice low and hoarse like broken rocks. I backed away slowly. He didn't follow. But I could feel it, his scent, sharp, fermented, wrong. "You're the one he marked," he continued. "The one he's binding. Who are you?" "I'm what comes before death. Before surrender. Before your Caelan stops pretending he's not just a beast in a crown." He tilted his head. "You think you know what alpha means? You don't, but I'll show you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a vial, a black vial. He threw it at the floor, and suddenly, pain, white hot, my knees buckled. The glyph on my chest exploded in agony, twisting like fire beneath skin, like my soul was trying to rip free from my bones. I screamed, collapsed. And through blurred vision, I saw him smile. Then vanish. It was nightfall when I felt him. Not heard, felt. His presence struck like a second heartbeat under my skin. My blood calmed. The fire dulled. The glyph dimmed just enough for me to breathe. He didn't knock. He kicked the door in. Caelan stormed into the infirmary, hair wild, coat torn, his eyes glowing. His beast was at the surface. And I'd never seen him look so afraid. Not of the rogue, not of the blood. Of me. He crossed the room in a single breath, dropping to his knees beside my bed. "Isolde." "I'm fine," I croaked. "You're not. I'm alive." He reached out, stopped himself, then said something so raw it carved my chest open wider than the glyph ever could. "If I had lost you, I would have gone feral. There's no locking it away anymore. Not with you. You've unmade me." He stood slowly, looked down at me, jaw clenched tight, shoulders trembling. And for the first time he didn't fight it, didn't hide it. He let his wolf rise, his teeth elongated, his eyes turned gold. His scent turned musky and wild and heat-filled. I wasn't scared, I was breathless. Because I knew. This was the real Caelan. Not the Lord, not the killer. Not the careful alpha pretending not to want what was already his. He stepped closer to the bed, leaning over me, hands on either side of my face, voice rough, wrecked. "If you want to run, do it now." I couldn't speak. "Because if I kiss you again, I won't stop at the glyph." His mouth hovered over mine. Hot breath, whiskey and pine and something dangerous. "Say it," he whispered. "Say stop, and I'll walk out that door." I didn't say stop. I lifted my mouth to his instead, and when our lips met, it wasn't like the dream. It was worse, wilder, real. He kissed me like he needed it to breathe. And I kissed him like I finally believed he might break for me. Chapter 10. Into the forest where wolves mate, he said he wouldn't touch me. But wolves always returned to the place where they buried their restraint. We didn't speak after the kiss. We just breathed, shallow, panting, stunned. Because something had shifted, not just between us, but inside us. His hand lingered at the back of my neck, thumb stroking the pulse that throbbed wildly under my skin. I could feel the mark between my breasts pulsing in rhythm to his heartbeat, like it no longer belonged only to me. "Come with me," Caelan whispered, voice rough from restraint. I need to show you something before I lose what's left of my control. I nodded. He didn't say where, didn't explain why. I just knew something was waiting for us outside these walls, something old, something wild, and possibly something sacred. The journey, it was after midnight when we left the manor. Caelan didn't use a car, he ran. And I, held against his chest, felt every thunderous step through the woods, each heartbeat in sync with the rhythm of ancient trees. He didn't speak during the journey, but I saw his face under the moonlight, carved in tension, eyes burning gold, jaw set tight as if resisting the temptation to stop in the middle of the forest and take me against a tree. Instead, he pushed deeper, deeper into the forest that curled around the mountains like a crown. I realized then, I had never been this far from human noise. Even the wind was quiet here. This wasn't just nature, it was territory. We stopped in a grove unlike anything I'd ever seen. Ancient stones arranged in a circle, covered in moss, each stone taller than a man, some cracked with age, others glowing faintly with the same golden shimmer as Caelan's eyes. "This is where alpha bonds are sealed," Caelan said quietly, setting me down gently. "This is where wolves surrender." I stood on shaking legs. "It's beautiful," I whispered. He didn't respond, he just looked at me, and the air grew heavier. "You need to know what I am without the title," he said. He stepped away. One hand unbuttoned his shirt slowly. Each inch of exposed skin made me ache. Because I saw it now, not just the beauty of him, but the scars. Pale silver slashes down his side. Bite marks on his shoulder that never fully healed. The map of a man who had survived wars no one wrote about. He dropped the shirt, then the belt, then the pants, and stood before me, naked, not just of clothes but of pretense. I saw the wolf then, even before the shift. It was in the way he breathed, the way his body coiled with restrained need, the way he looked at me like he was still asking for permission. I swallowed hard. My voice broke. "I trust you." His eyes flared, and then he shifted. It wasn't like in the books. There was no grotesque snapping of bones, no horror, no agony. It was graceful, like his body was always meant to be both man and beast. He towered over me, dark fur rippling in the moonlight, eyes burning bright, fangs bared not in threat, but reverence. He circled me slowly, sniffed the air. Then he bowed, dropped his massive body onto the ground in front of me. Submission, not demand, not domination. He was offering me a choice, to run, to claim, to accept, or to leave. And I stepped forward. My fingers brushed through his fur, and when he shifted back, I was the one left breathless. Because Caelan, once again fully man, looked up at me not like a lord, not like a wolf, but like a man on the edge of something divine. "You're not just marked," he said, voice ragged. "You're awakening." I gasped as he pressed a hand to the glyph between my breasts. It flared, gold and red, a swirling storm of heat and light beneath my skin. "You weren't supposed to bear it," he whispered, "but now, you're carrying part of me. It's not just a bond anymore, it's evolving. Into what? I don't know. This hasn't happened in centuries, but if it continues..." He looked away. "If it continues, you might not stay fully human." I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive, and wildly, shamelessly drawn to him. "Then show me," I whispered. "Show me what I'm becoming." He kissed me again, but this time it wasn't gentle. It was primal. Desperate. Possessive. He lifted me in his arms and laid me down in the center of the stone circle. The grass was cool beneath my back, but his body was fire over mine. He undressed me slowly, reverently, as if I were the sacred thing here. Each inch of my skin was kissed, touched, marked in a language older than words. I wrapped my legs around his waist. "I want you," I breathed. "Not as your mate, not as your virgin, just as me." His eyes flickered gold. And then he took me, fully, completely, not fast, not rough, thoroughly. Every stroke was a breaking point. Every moan was a vow. He made love like a man burying his fears in the only body that ever silenced them. And I took him like I was born for it. He didn't leave me afterward. He curled around me, spooning my naked body against his. His hands never left my skin. His lips whispered secrets against the back of my neck, secrets he'd never dare say in daylight. The glyph no longer glowed. It throbbed, in sync with him, like I'd become part of his heartbeat, part of his fate, and for the first time since I walked into his world, I didn't feel sold or owned. I felt chosen. Chapter 11. The Council of Chains and Ash. They say, when a human is marked by a wolf, she becomes his. But no one warns you what happens when the human starts becoming the wolf. The dawn was slow to rise over the forest grove. I felt it first on my bare skin. Cool morning light touching the remnants of heat that still pulsed between my thighs. The ache in my body was a gentle thudding echo of what Caelan had done to me in the night. His touch still lingered beneath my skin, like fingerprints burned into soul. We hadn't spoken since. There had been no need. He had made love to me like a man unraveling centuries of restraint, and I had taken him in like a woman desperate to remember what it meant to be wanted without shame. But now, with sunlight teasing the treetops and dew misting the stones around us, I could sense something had changed, not just in our bodies, but in the air. Caelan stirred beside me. He was already awake, even before his eyes opened. His hand brushed over the small of my back, his thumb circling the mark. "It's still glowing," he said softly, voice raw from sleep and sex and too much need. "That's not supposed to happen after mating." I pulled the blanket tighter over my chest even though I wasn't cold. "What does it mean?" He looked at me then, and for the first time I saw something close to fear in the Alpha Lord's eyes. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I think they felt it." The tremor of power. It wasn't just the glyph, it was the land itself. By the time Caelan led us out of the forest, the trees seemed closer, as if they'd shifted while we slept. Birds flew in frantic patterns above us, and somewhere in the far-off distance, a low, unnatural howl pierced the wind. When we reached the edge of the manor grounds, a dozen guards stood waiting. Their weapons were not drawn, but their eyes were wide. And every single one of them bowed the moment Caelan stepped forward, even before he gave them orders. A man in armor, taller than the rest, with snow-white streaks in his dark beard, stepped forward. "Lord Caelan," he murmured. "The council sent a message at dawn." Caelan stiffened. "What kind of message?" The man hesitated, then reached into a satchel and pulled out a small box wrapped in black leather. Inside, a single piece of silver chain, old, rusted, burned at one end. My stomach dropped. Caelan closed the box and didn't speak for a moment. Then he turned to me, jaw clenched, shoulders rigid with control. "They know." "Who?" I asked, voice small. "The ancient council, the ones who wrote the pact that keeps werewolves hidden from human governments, the ones who decide if a bond like ours is too powerful to be allowed." I blinked. "And what does the chain mean?" "It means they're coming," Caelan said, voice hard and dark, "to see if you've turned into a threat." Caelan didn't speak to anyone else for the rest of the day. He took me underground, through stone corridors lit by fire torches. Deeper than I ever imagined the manor extended. The tunnels were ancient, carved from volcanic rock, the walls smooth with time. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the only place no one else is allowed to see, not even my own pack." We passed through a final gate, one that required both blood and claw to unlock. And then, we stepped into a chamber I would never forget. Bones lined the walls, not human, not animal, wolf bones, thousands of them, stacked in neat rows like trophies or warnings. "This is where the council brings wolves they want to break," Caelan said, "before they sentence them, before they put them down." "Put down?" I whispered. He nodded. "They don't believe in redemption, only in silence. And the last time a human bonded with a wolf this strongly, they killed them both." That night, Caelan gave me a choice. "We can run," he said. "Now, tonight, I have safe houses in the North Mountains. We could vanish, before they arrive." I stared at him. "You'd give up your title?" He nodded. "I'd give up everything. I already gave you my body. You have my beast. And now, I'd rather be rogue than let them put a hand on you." My chest ached, but I knew running wasn't the answer. "Not for either of us. If we run, they'll hunt us," I whispered. "And they'll kill your pack. We both know it." His jaw tightened. "And if we stay, then we face them. Together." The next day the sky turned blood orange at noon, thunder without rain, winds without cause, and then, they came. 3 figures cloaked in red and black robes, hoods up, faces veiled with ash. One of them walked barefoot, one of them carried a golden staff tipped with bone, and the last, the tallest, smelled like iron and smoke and centuries-old war. Caelan stood at the gates to meet them, flanked by 2 guards and me. The tallest figure spoke first. "You broke the pact." "I did," Caelan said. "And I'd do it again." The council member stepped closer, then looked at me. "You sold your virginity," he said, voice low and strangely curious. "Do you understand what that means in our law?" I stood straighter. "I do. But I didn't sell my soul." He hummed, and then lifted his staff. The glyph on my chest burned again. But this time, it didn't hurt, it flared, like it was defending me. "And Caelan," he shifted, right there, in front of them, but not into a full beast, only his eyes, his claws, his fangs, the alpha, the protector, mine. "She's not your enemy," Caelan growled. "She's your evolution." They didn't attack, they didn't arrest us. Instead, they stared, measured, whispered among themselves. Then, without explanation, the tallest one said, "You have 1 lunar cycle, 1 moon. If she loses herself, if she becomes more beast than human, we return. And we won't ask questions then." They vanished into smoke, no horses, no footsteps, just mist. And I was left shaking in Caelan's arms, a deadline now wrapped around my heartbeat. 1 month. To prove love didn't need to be leashed? Chapter 12. The Alpha's Lake of Secrets love was never supposed to bloom in a place like this. But maybe that's why it bloomed like wildfire. Caelan didn't speak for a long time after the council vanished into mist, neither did I. He simply held me. And in that silent, blistering embrace, we both knew something had shifted again. A new countdown had begun. 1 moon cycle. 1 shot to prove our love wasn't some dangerous anomaly. 1 chance to defy centuries of rigid werewolf law with nothing but instinct and emotion. But even warriors need to breathe. So when night fell and Caelan took me by the hand, guiding me away from the manor, past the watchful eyes of his guards and the heavy gates of his domain, I didn't ask where we were going. I simply followed, with his hand wrapped around mine like a lifeline. We took a motorcycle this time. A sleek black beast that roared like thunder beneath us. He didn't wear a helmet, and neither did I. My hair flew wildly behind me, tangling with the wind. I clutched his waist, cheek pressed against his back, heart pounding faster with every mile he drove into the woods. Not the same forest as before. This one was higher, colder, closer to the mountains. The roads narrowed, then disappeared altogether, until he killed the engine, took my hand again, and led me by foot through a clearing kissed with moonlight. And there, hidden between 2 cliffs and a halo of silver pine trees, a lake. Still, dark, perfectly circular, like it had been carved by the gods themselves. The surface reflected the stars like a mirror, as if we'd stepped into a dream that had been waiting only for us. "This place is sacred," Caelan said softly behind me, pulling off his leather jacket and folding it neatly on a rock. "Not to the wolves. Just to me." I turned to him, searching his face. "Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because no one else knows it exists." I watched him undress again, but this time it wasn't charged with the desperation of sex. It was intimate, like he was shedding the world. When his shirt came off, I noticed something I hadn't before. Ink. A tattoo just under his ribs, lines of foreign script that glowed faintly under the moonlight. "What does it say?" He hesitated, then walked closer, letting me trace it with my fingers. "It's an old tongue," he said quietly. "It says, 'I am the blood of my father, but not his shadow.' A confession, a vow." He kissed my forehead as I read it aloud, then stepped back, undid the button of his jeans and dropped them, completely unashamed. The sight of him under the stars stole my breath. Hard muscles wrapped in moonlight. The bare curve of his hips, the trail of hair leading down, and that aching part of him already half hard from nothing but closeness. He walked into the lake without looking back. I stripped slowly. He didn't watch, but he knew. When I stepped into the water, the cold kissed my ankles first, then my calves, then thighs, rising with every brave step. By the time it reached my waist, I was shaking, not from fear, but anticipation. Caelan turned then, and the moment he saw me, naked and trembling and lit by moonlight, his expression changed. He held out a hand. I took it, and he pulled me into his chest, into the water, into warmth. Our bodies touched beneath the surface, torso to torso, thigh to thigh. His hands moved gently over my back, my hips, my face. "You are not a mistake," he whispered. No matter what they say, you are not a threat. You're a gift I never thought I deserved. Tears burned my eyes. I'm scared, I admitted. Of what's happening to me, of the way I feel, of you. His hand tilted my chin. You should be. Then he kissed me. This time, we weren't consumed by need. We weren't rushing toward climax. We were worshipping. He lifted me in the lake, water buoying my weight. I wrapped my legs around him, skin to skin, heart to heart. His mouth traveled across my collarbone, over my breasts, down to the mark still glowing faintly. And then, he entered me again, slowly, painfully slow. I gasped as he filled me, stretched me, held me so close I felt I would unravel. But it wasn't just physical anymore, it was bonded. Every thrust spoke of something deeper, a connection growing stronger. The wolf in him curling around the girl in me, guarding her from the dark. He whispered things against my skin. Things like, mine. Only ever mine. Even if I have to burn this world down. And when we came together, it wasn't a climax. It was a promise. We stayed in the water for what felt like hours. His arms were around me, his head resting on my shoulder, my fingers trailing through the dark ripples as they danced with moonlight. But even in that peace, I felt it, a hum beneath my skin. Not pain, not pleasure, power. When I finally looked down at the mark, it wasn't just glowing, it was pulsing, alive. Caelan, I whispered. Something's happening. He looked down, his expression changed, sharp, wide-eyed. Not fear, but recognition. You're evolving, he breathed. The council was right. You're not just bonded, you're transforming. I shook my head. Into what? I don't know, he admitted, pulling me tighter. But whatever it is, it's not just mine anymore, it's yours. I thought I saw something then. A flicker beneath the water's surface. Not a fish, not a reflection. A memory, not mine, but Caelan's. Blood, fire. A boy locked in a cage. A father with silver fangs. A voice shouting, "You'll never be enough unless you kill her." I gasped and backed away. "What did you see?" he demanded, grabbing my arms. "It wasn't me," I whispered. "It was you, your memory." He froze. Then his eyes widened in shock. No human has ever seen into a wolf's mind before. We stared at each other, and that's when we realized we were becoming something new, neither just human, nor just wolf. A hybrid bond, a singular soul in two skins. And the council would never let it live. Chapter 13. The bloodline. Caelan tried to bury some families' passed-down heirlooms. Caelan's passed-down chains. The world felt quieter the next morning, not peaceful, but held, as though it were pausing just long enough to let us breathe before the storm truly began. I woke curled in Caelan's arms, still naked, still slick from where our bodies had joined in the sacred lake. The water was cold now, and the sky above us had deepened from inky blue to the dull gray of pre-dawn. His chest rose and fell beneath my cheek, steady, calm, but tense, like he was bracing for something. "Are you awake?" I whispered, afraid to break whatever fragile stillness cocooned us. He didn't open his eyes, but nodded. "Couldn't sleep. You were seeing things again in your dreams." My breath hitched. "You saw them too?" "Only fragments, but enough." He opened his eyes then, silver this time, sharp and alert. The wolf in him was always close now, too close. "You saw my father, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low, tight. "You saw the cage." I sat up slowly, the water lapping at my waist, hair clinging to my shoulders like ink. "Yes," I admitted. "And the blood, and the words." He nodded grimly. "Then it's time I tell you everything." We dried off in silence, dressed in the softest layers he'd packed in his saddlebag. Wool, leather, warm cotton. He handed me a spare long-sleeved Henley that smelled like cedar and smoke. I wore it without protest. When the sun rose fully above the trees, Caelan started walking. Not back toward the manor. Deeper into the woods. And I followed. There were 5 high blood packs before me, Caelan began. The oldest bloodlines, direct descendants from the first shifters. My family ruled the Raveran forest for generations. He stopped by a gnarled tree twisted like a broken hand. Each alpha was expected to produce one heir. Male, strong, obedient. His voice dropped lower. My father was alpha before me, Lord Tiberanthorn. The name alone made my skin prickle. He trained me since I was 5, not with lessons, not with love, with cages, with fear. He believed pain made us pure, Caelan crouched by the tree and brushed away dirt and moss from a flat stone embedded in the roots. It was an old grave marker, unmarked but soaked in age and sorrow. "He buried my mother here," Caelan said softly. "She wasn't pureblood. She wasn't from a noble line. He chose her for breeding. When she tried to run with me when I was 8, he caught her." My heart twisted. What did he do? His jaw clenched. He made me watch. Silence stretched between us. Thick. Suffocating. I didn't shift for the first time until I was 14. That's late. Most alpha heirs shift by 11. He looked up, eyes gleaming with cold steel. I was too soft, too human. That's what he told me every time he beat me. I knelt beside him and reached out, gently taking his hand. "You're not soft," I whispered, "but your heart is still whole, and that's more powerful than any bloodline." He stared at me like he didn't believe it, like no one had ever said that to him before. We walked another half-mile in silence before reaching what Caelan called the Hollow, an old hunting cabin, tucked into a stone ridge and covered in thick ivy and moss. It looked forgotten, abandoned to time and rot, but the moment we stepped inside, it hummed with familiarity, with memory. "This is where I lived when I ran away at 16, he said. Before I came back and challenged him for alpha, I glanced around. Old books, a fireplace with ashes from years ago, a bed small but solid, a single necklace nailed into the wall, wooden beads strung together by fraying cord. "She made that," Caelan murmured. "My mother." He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed and looked up at me with something different in his expression now. Something raw, vulnerable. I wasn't ready to be alpha, but I knew if I didn't kill him, I'd never be free, and no one else would ever be safe. "You killed your father?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "In front of the council, as law demands, trial by fang, and when I won, I was bleeding so badly they didn't think I'd survive. But I did. I crawled back to this place after, and I dreamed of nothing but fire. That night, we stayed in the Hollow. We lit a fire, shared a can of peaches he'd stashed years ago, still edible somehow, and as the storm rolled in outside, lightning crackling through the pines, I realized how deeply the past had carved itself into Caelan's soul. He slept fitfully, and I didn't sleep at all, because the dreams came again, but this time it wasn't his past, it was mine, or perhaps a future. I stood in a burning forest, ash in my mouth, my stomach swollen, pregnant, and I was running. Someone was chasing me. No, not someone. A wolf. But not Caelan. I woke with a scream caught in my throat, drenched in sweat, the scent of smoke still clinging to my skin. Caelan jolted awake beside me. "You saw it again?" he rasped. "Yes," I whispered. "But it wasn't your memory. It was something else. I think I'm seeing pieces of the bond, like I'm tethered to something bigger now, something more primal than either of us." His eyes darkened. "Then the council won't wait until the full moon. They'll act sooner." I trembled. "But why would they fear me?" "Because they don't understand you," he said. "And what they don't understand, they kill." We left the Hollow at dawn. And that's when we found him. A tall, golden-haired man waiting at the edge of the manor woods, surrounded by his own guards, wearing a smirk that was all venom and charm. "Lord Caelan," the man drawled, bowing theatrically. "How delightful to see you again, and this must be the human girl I've heard so much about." Caelan stepped in front of me like a shield. "Ronan." My heart thumped. Even before Caelan said his name, I felt it. This man was a wolf, but different, more polished, controlled, like a serpent in fine clothing. Alpha Ronan of the Eastlands. Caelan spoke low and sharp. "You're not welcome on Raveran soil." "I came bearing a message from the council," Ronan replied. "They're reevaluating the situation. There's talk of a culling of unnatural bonds that threaten the veil between our world and the humans." He looked directly at me then. "Unless, of course, she consents to a reassignment." My blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means," Caelan growled, "they want to strip our bond and give her to you." Ronan smiled. "Only temporarily, of course, just until we can ensure she won't break reality." He stepped closer, and the air rippled with tension. "I would treat her well, Caelan, perhaps even better than you have. Let her try a more refined alpha." Caelan's fists clenched, and then he shifted, not fully, but just enough. Claws, fangs, eyes glowing silver. "Leave," Caelan snarled. Before I tear your spine out and feed it to the council." Ronan's smirk faltered, but only slightly. Then he bowed, turned, and vanished into the woods. By nightfall, the mood in the manor had shifted. The guards were tenser, the winds carried whispers. The council wasn't just watching anymore, they were moving. And somewhere deep inside me, something else was moving too. Not a voice, not a beast, but a change. Like the part of me that had once been only human, was slowly waking into something more. Caelan pulled me into his room that night and locked the door behind us. "If we don't anchor the bond fully before the moon," he said, "they'll try to sever it. Or kill you, or both." I stared at him, heart thudding. "Anchor it how?" His eyes flickered to the bed, then back to me, with one more claiming. "Not just of your body." He stepped forward. "This time, I want your soul." Chapter 14, The Alpha's Soul Claim. There are two kinds of bonds, those forged in blood and those sealed in the soul. One can be broken, the other changes you forever. The moment Caelan said it, "This time, I want your soul," the room grew smaller, not physically, but in atmosphere. The space between us thinned, charged, like the air had turned into something electric. It wasn't lust. Not entirely, not anymore. It was need. Unspoken, ancient, hungrier than flesh and bone. And in that fragile silence, I realized the weight of what he meant. This wasn't about claiming me like he had the first night. That had been carnal, complicated. But this was primal, spiritual, unalterable. If I let him complete the bond, there would be no walking away, not for me, not for him, not for either of us. Ever. And the terrifying part was, I wanted it. Even if it ruined me, even if it woke something in me I couldn't understand, even if it meant I could never return to who I was before. "I trust you," I said softly, lifting my chin. The moonlight through the windows caught the silver in his eyes as his expression shifted. Less wolf, more man. His lips parted slightly, breath sharp like he hadn't expected me to say yes. "Say it again," he rasped. "I trust you." And that's when he moved, not fast, not rough, but with purpose, with reverence, like every second mattered. Like he knew this would be the last night we'd ever be just ourselves, before something irreversible was set in motion. Caelan didn't touch me first with his hands, he touched me with his words. "This won't be gentle," he said as he stepped closer, voice thick with warning. "But it will be honest. Every piece of me, human and wolf, will leave its mark on you." I swallowed, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "I want all of you." His jaw flexed. Then he reached up, threading his fingers through my hair, tilting my head slightly to look into my eyes. "I will ask you 3 times before the ritual ends. If you say yes each time, the bond will seal. Forever." "Okay," I whispered. His mouth brushed over mine. A feather-like kiss that carried no hunger, only heat. "Then undress for me," he murmured, slowly. I did. Trembling fingers peeled away the softness of the shirt he'd given me, the borrowed comfort. I slid it over my head and let it fall in a quiet puddle on the stone floor of his room. He didn't move, didn't touch, he only watched, silver eyes burning into every inch of bare skin, I revealed like it was sacred. "More," he said. I stepped out of the lounge pants and stood before him completely nude, but I didn't feel ashamed. I felt like I was being seen, worshipped, claimed with eyes before touch. And when he finally stepped forward, Caelan's hands were fire and velvet. One on my hip, one at the small of my back. He pulled me into his chest and whispered the first of the 3 vows. "Do you give yourself to me, body and soul?" I nodded once, voice quiet but firm. Yes. His mouth met mine, and this time it wasn't soft. It was claiming, teeth grazing my bottom lip, tongue tasting the gasping moan that slipped from my throat. He lifted me effortlessly and carried me to the bed like I weighed nothing. Not tossed. Cradled, and then he was undressing. Every inch of him revealed like a secret being offered. His chest carved and marred with old scars. His arms inked with runes and ancient markings. His wolf half barely restrained beneath the surface. He climbed over me and kissed my thighs first, then my hips, my stomach, my breastbone. Each place like a vow. Each touch like fire igniting soft places I didn't know could burn. And when he finally settled between my thighs, I felt the full weight of him, his need, his heat, his restraint, and knew he was holding back for me. For this second vow, he said against my throat, You must speak your desire. He paused, lips grazing my pulse. Say you want it. I want you, I breathed, threading my fingers through his hair. I want to be yours. He growled then, a low, primal sound that vibrated against my skin and made my core clench. He pushed inside me slowly. Pain and pleasure, fire and surrender, my body arching to meet him, to take every inch of what he offered. He moved with unbearable precision, thrusts deep, deliberate, timed with the rapid beat of my heart. Our breath tangled, our limbs locked. And then something shifted. Not in the air. In me. I felt it, like a thread inside my soul being pulled taut, like my blood remembered something I didn't. And Caelan must have felt it too, because he paused mid-thrust and looked down at me with his eyes glowing brighter than I'd ever seen. It's starting, he said roughly. The bond is rooting. I gasped as something tugged deep in my stomach, an ache, not physical, but spiritual. Like my soul was being peeled open, like his was slipping inside. The air grew colder. The candles flickered wildly even though no wind blew. And then Caelan bent forward, sweat slicked and trembling above me, panting against my neck. Last time, he said, voice thick and raw. Are you sure you want this? For eternity? His lips grazed the shell of my ear. Say yes. I looked into his eyes and saw everything. His pain, his past, his wolf, his vow to never be like his father. And I said it, yes. The world broke open. Not literally. But in me, a surge of heat rushed through my spine, bursting behind my eyes like lightning. My back arched, my vision blurred, and every nerve in my body sang with blinding pleasure as Caelan roared, his final thrust claiming the deepest part of me. Something passed between us then. Not just emotion, not just sensation, but essence, his soul sinking into mine, my breath stilled. And then, I felt him. Not just in the room, not just in my body, inside my blood, like he was part of me now, everywhere, always. When we collapsed, shaking, tangled in limbs and sweat and bonfire, I looked down at my chest and saw it. A small silvery crescent moon embedded just above my heart, shimmering like a brand, glowing softly, fading slowly. What is it? I whispered, tracing it. The soul bond mark, Caelan said hoarsely, voice broken from the intensity. It only appears if the bond is mutual. I looked at him, startled. But you never said. I didn't want to push you, he said, reaching to touch the same place on his chest where my mark now mirrored his. I've loved you from the moment you told me you hated me in that library. My throat tightened, and I fell for you the moment you didn't punish me for it. He laughed, low and quiet. Then we're even. We lay like that, wrapped in each other, skin still humming with the remnants of the soul bond. When the first howl split the sky, followed by a second, and a third, Caelan sat bolt upright, eyes flashing. They're here, he said, naked and already moving for his weapons. The council didn't wait, they sent enforcers. I scrambled from the bed, heart pounding. What do we do? He turned, eyes locked on mine. We fight, and then, softer. We protect what we claimed. Chapter 15. The Siege of Blood and Bond. When the wolves came, they didn't howl to warn us. They came to break the only thing we had just begun to build. Love. The first thing I remember was the sound of the window shattering, a high crystalline note of glass breaking. It sounded nothing like in the movies, no dramatic tinkling, no slow-motion shards falling in beautiful patterns. It was violent, quick, jagged, like the beginning of a war. Caelan was already halfway across the room before I could process what was happening, his body snapping into focus like muscle memory had taken over. His bare chest glistened with sweat from the soul bond we had just sealed. But his mind was already 1,000 miles ahead, in battle, in strategy. Stay here, he said as he pulled open the iron drawer embedded in the stone wall behind the fireplace. A hidden cache of weapons shimmered inside. Blades not made of ordinary steel, but the black, rune-carved alloy only alphas of noble bloodlines possessed. I wrapped a sheet around my naked body and stepped forward. I'm not staying in here while you fight off gods know what. His eyes whipped toward me. This is different, Isolde. These aren't rogues. These are council enforcers. The council? My voice cracked. Why would they come now? Because we bonded, he said darkly, and they sensed it. The room shuddered again as something slammed into the front doors downstairs. Not a knock, not even a battering ram. A presence, too large, too powerful, too inhuman. Caelan, I whispered, fingers gripping the frame of the doorway. Are they coming for me? He looked at me for one long beat. Then he walked forward and pressed one of the blades into my hand. No, he said, they're coming for us. By the time we descended the stairwell, the manor was already falling apart. A fire had begun somewhere in the east wing. Embers spilled through the air like burning snow. One of Caelan's guards lay crumpled near the archway of the main hall, blood slick on the marble. My heart pounded. Not because of fear, but because of the bond. I could feel Caelan's adrenaline, his urgency, his restraint. It pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. He moved like a predator, silent, fast, fluid, cutting down two black-clad men who surged through the door like shadows. They didn't howl like wolves, they didn't shift, they were pure killers, sent by the council to enforce one of their most ancient laws: no alpha shall bond with an unclaimed virgin of impure lineage without council blessing. And was that crime? I'd gone from a girl who sold her virginity out of desperation to a bonded mate illegally tied to the most powerful alpha in the region. They wanted me dead. And Caelan broke in. The fight spread quickly. We made it to the front hall just in time to see the main doors blasted off their hinges by something I couldn't see. Just a force, an unnatural wind of power that tore through wood and stone like parchment. The man who stepped through it wasn't ordinary. He was tall, inhumanly so, hair white as snow, skin dusted with ancient markings. His eyes glowed a cold, unnatural blue. Around him, 5 other wolves, alpha-ranked enforcers, moved in practiced formation. Caelan tensed beside me. "Eric's," he said coldly, "the council's executioner." The white-haired man smiled faintly. "Caelan Fenric, you violated 3 laws in one night, that's quite the record." I claimed what's mine. "She's not of noble blood," Eric's replied, eyeing me. "And she was unblessed. You know the punishment." "Try touching her," Caelan growled, "and I'll paint this floor with your marrow." That was when everything happened at once. Eric surged forward, too fast to follow with normal eyes. Caelan blocked the blow with a shimmering blade, one forged in the old blood rites, but the impact sent him flying across the room, crashing into the banister. "Caelan!" I screamed. I ran to him, heart in my throat, and before I realized what I was doing, I shoved myself between him and Eric's. "Get out of the way, girl," the executioner said calmly, raising his hand. His power burned like ice, but something ignited inside me. The mark on my chest, the soul bond, flared to life, white-hot and blinding. It expanded out of me like a shockwave, pushing Eric's and the others back several feet. The room froze. Caelan looked up from the blood on his lips, stunned. "You activated it," he said hoarsely. "You're half of the bond. It's awakened." I blinked, shaking, as a wind of silver light wrapped around my arms and wrists like armor made of moonlight. I didn't mean to." "You protected me," he said, pulling himself up. "That power? It's sacred. Only mates who give themselves willingly can draw on it." Eric snarled, now bloodied at the lip. "Then I'll kill both of you." The rest of the battle blurred. I barely remembered the way I moved, how I fought, how I didn't die. The bond guided me. It was like dancing with a partner who already knew your every thought. Caelan and I moved together through the chaos, slicing, striking, shielding. And for every guard that fell, more came. Until the stone floors were soaked, until the moon itself dimmed, until only Eric's remained. He stood there, heaving, cornered by Caelan and me. His face bloodied, his pride shattered. "You think this is over?" he spat. "You think the council will let this stand?" "They won't get a choice," Caelan said quietly, sword raised. Then he struck. And for the first time in 50 years, a council executioner fell. By the time dawn came, the manor was in ruins. Bodies littered the outer gardens. The forest around us still smoked with the scent of burned magic and blood. But we were alive. I stood with Caelan on the upper balcony, wrapped in his coat, staring down at what we had survived. "Was it worth it?" I asked, my voice raw. He looked at me, hair wild from the battle, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. "You're worth war," he said. And then, softer, "I'd burn the whole world just to keep your heart beating next to mine." Chapter 16. The Price of Freedom. Some wars are not fought with blades. They're fought with vows, sacrifices, and the courage to let someone love you completely, even when you don't believe you deserve it. The ruins of Fenric Manor still smoldered as the first light of morning crept across the charred stone. I stood at the balcony, barefoot on ash-covered marble, Caelan's coat draped over my shoulders. Beneath it I wore only a slip, torn and soot-streaked, yet my body no longer trembled. Because I had chosen this, I had chosen him, and now the world wanted us both dead for it. Behind me, Caelan moved with that quiet, feral grace I was beginning to recognize, not as arrogance but as instinct. He moved like someone always calculating, always ready, always prepared to lose everything. "Except me." "I called the inner circle," he said, voice deep and tired. "They're not pleased. They weren't going to be," I whispered. "I'm not one of them. You're mine." He came up behind me and placed a hand on my waist, then lowered his lips to the mark still glowing faintly on my chest. "That makes you more." I closed my eyes. For a moment we simply stood there. He had blood on his hands, literally, and yet his touch was gentle, reverent, like I was made of something sacred. I turned toward him. "Will they come again?" He hesitated. "Yes," he admitted. "Not to kill this time, to demand judgment. An alpha who forms a soul bond with an unapproved mate violates every traditional law. If I don't submit, they'll come after everyone I protect, my people, my lands. And if you do submit, they'll strip my title, my name, they'll take everything. Except you." I exhaled. It wasn't fair. But then again, neither was the world that made me sell my virginity to survive. "I'll go with you," I said. Caelan stiffened. "To the tribunal? I'm part of this now, Caelan. I won't let you stand alone." The journey to the tribunal citadel took 2 days by wolfback. We rode through scorched pine forests, across rivers that glittered under moonlight, and into the carved obsidian mountain where the Alpha Circle had ruled for centuries. The closer we got, the more I felt the change in Caelan. He was harder now, more silent, not cold but distant, as if bracing for what was to come. On the second night, as we made camp near the foothills of the Silver Range, I found him staring at the fire, hands stained with charcoal from the meal he hadn't eaten. "I didn't think I'd ever mate," he said suddenly. Voice low, I looked up from where I was arranging our bedrolls. "What?" "I was raised for war, not love. I learned to kill long before I learned how to want. I thought claiming someone would make me weaker." He turned toward me, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "But the truth is, being bonded to you doesn't make me weaker. It just reminds me I have something to lose." I moved to him slowly and knelt in front of him. "You have someone to lose," I corrected gently. He swallowed hard, jaw working. Then he cupped my cheek with a hand so big, so scarred it made me ache. "And I'll fight like hell not to lose you, Isolde." The citadel was made of stone that remembered every drop of blood ever spilled. Tall pillars rose like the spines of ancient beasts, each inscribed with the names of alphas who had ruled, died, or betrayed their vows. The tribunal chamber itself was circular, 12 high-backed thrones, one for each ruling alpha clan. We stood in the center of the ring, me in a simple white dress, bare feet, hair braided down my back. Caelan beside me in ceremonial wolf leather and silver, the mark of our bond visible over his heart. The voices of the circle were cold, ancient, and echoing. "You violated the laws of blood," Caelan Fenric, spoke the High Alpha, a silver-haired she-wolf named Aerith. "You bonded to a human born without declaration, without right, without permission." "I bonded to my mate," he said simply. "There are protocols, you defied them, I protected what was mine." They turned to me. "And you," Aerith said, tone unreadable. "Isolde Danan, what did you trade to stand where you stand now?" I looked them in the eye. "I traded survival," I said. "I sold my virginity to him, and he gave me dignity, he gave me choice, he gave me love. So judge me if you must, but don't call it a crime." A murmur swept the chamber. But it was Caelan's next words that silenced them all. "If you strip me of my title, I accept it," he said. "But know this, if you touch her, if you brand her a threat, if you take even a hair from her head, I will tear down this circle with my bare hands, and I will not stop until there's nothing left but dust and ash." The room fell into stunned stillness. Then Alpha Aerith rose slowly. "Then you leave us no choice." Hours passed in silence as the circle deliberated. When they returned, there was a change in the air, a softening, something uncertain and unfamiliar. Aerith stepped forward. "We were raised on law," she said slowly, "but law without evolution is just a cage. The soul bond is rare, sacred. To destroy it would be to destroy our own future. She looked at me, then at Caelan. Your bond will be allowed to stand. A breath I hadn't known I was holding left my lungs, but Aerith's next words made my blood freeze. However, to keep it, Caelan Fenric must relinquish his seat among the 12. You may keep your lands, but not your title. From this day forward, you are no longer a High Alpha. You are simply Alpha of Fenric Hollow. Caelan didn't flinch, he simply turned to me and smiled. Then I lose nothing that matters. After we left the citadel as the sun was setting, casting golden light over the blood-soaked stone, the wind in the mountains was cold, but I no longer shivered. We rode back in silence, hands linked on the reins. Later, in our rebuilt manor, when the fire was lit and the world quiet again, I asked him, was it worth it? He touched the mark over my heart and kissed it softly. You were worth more than a crown. Chapter 17, his mate, his kingdom, his heir. He gave up everything for me, and somehow ended up with even more. 6 months later, Fenric Hollow no longer smelled of war. It smelled of rain-washed pine, roasted bread from the rebuilt village bakery, and wildflowers blooming freely in the open fields Caelan had ordered to be preserved. The manor had been rebuilt stone by stone, this time not as a fortress, but as a home. High windows, sun-warmed floors, thick wooden doors carved with old runes and fresh vines. In place of a war room, there was now a library. The throne hall? Replaced with a nursery still under construction, because everything had changed. And yet, some things had only grown stronger. Caelan hadn't lost everything when he stepped down from the circle. In fact, he gained more than any of them could have predicted. After defying the Alpha Circle, support poured in from younger Alphas, disenfranchised clans, and rebellious minor nobles. They donated land, forged trade alliances, and opened forbidden resources. And just like that, the name Caelan Fenric became something more powerful than a title. It became a legend. Within months, the entire southern region pledged loyalty, not to the circle but to him. Independent, ungoverned, yet deeply respected, he became wealthier than he'd ever been as a titled Alpha, owning more land, overseeing peaceful treaties, and forming his own network of safe havens for bonded couples. And I was no longer the virgin girl who sold herself. I was his bonded mate, his partner, his equal, and I had a secret. One I was about to share with him. The wedding wasn't the spectacle I imagined it would be. There was no parade, no golden carriages, just us. The ceremony took place beneath the ancient moon tree in the center of Fenric Hollow. The roots of the tree wrapped around a stone altar that had long since cracked with age, and wildflowers had bloomed inside the fractures. A local healer officiated. Pack members gathered with respectful silence. The night was cool and clear, and the full moon lit the clearing with silver light. I wore a dress made of hand-spun lace dyed with midnight ink, and Caelan stood opposite me in a dark tunic, his silver cuffs bearing the new sigil he'd designed himself, a wolf's head over a heart wrapped in flame. I've never belonged to anything, I whispered, hands trembling as I took his. You don't belong to me, he said quietly. You belong with me. I thought I'd spend my life surviving, I whispered. But with you I've learned to live. The vows were sealed not with magic, but with a kiss. Long, soft, eternal. And when the crowd erupted into soft howls and murmurs of joy, I realized I no longer feared them. Because I was no longer alone, I was his. The manor's east wing had been prepared in secret. The room smelled of vanilla and clove, and the fire had already been lit. A velvet canopy bed waited at the center, its posts carved with wolves in various phases of the moon. The sheets were new, the pillows fluffed. But all I noticed was him. Caelan locked the door with a flick of his hand, then turned to me. No armor tonight, he said, stepping out of his boots, then tugging his shirt over his head. His body was just as I remembered, scarred, solid, real, a temple of war carved from devotion. But his eyes, they burned with something far gentler. I moved to him, hands finding his chest. And no holding back, he swept me into his arms and laid me gently on the bed. What followed was not the frenzied desperation of our first time. It was slower, worshipful. He undressed me piece by piece, pausing to kiss each new patch of skin, as if memorizing it all over again. His mouth traveled the length of my throat, lingered over my breasts, traced lower until I was breathless, trembling, gasping his name. "Say it again," he murmured against my skin. "Caelan?" I whispered. "No," he said, kissing me slowly. "Say you're mine." "I'm yours," I cried softly, arms wrapping around his shoulders as he finally entered me. Deep, slow, claiming me all over again. "I've always been yours." Our bodies moved in rhythm until the stars faded behind the curtains and the fire flickered low. And even then, he didn't stop touching me. He held me through the night, his fingers tangled in my hair, heart beating in time with mine. The next morning, I stood in the garden barefoot, a mug of tea in hand, wearing nothing but one of his shirts. The wind teased the edges of my hair as I stared down at the growing garden. It was still early. The sun was just beginning to rise. Caelan came up behind me, arms wrapping around my waist, his nose buried in my neck. "You're glowing," he murmured. "I'm pregnant," I said. His arms tightened, not with fear, but with something close to awe. He turned me toward him. "Are you sure?" I nodded. He stared at me for a moment, then dropped to his knees and pressed a kiss to my stomach, reverent and breathless. "A child born from love," he whispered. "Not obligation, not politics, just us." I knelt down too, tears burning my eyes. "They'll never be alone. Not like we were. They'll be safe," he promised. "They'll know love, and they'll know strength." Epilogue. Years later, the sound of laughter filled the garden. A small boy with jet-black curls and golden eyes chased butterflies among the lavender, while I sat beneath the moon tree, sketching herbs into a worn journal. Caelan was nearby, shirtless as always, splitting wood for winter with a single swing of his axe. He'd grown only more powerful with time, now overseeing a vast network of independent clans who refused the Circle's cold control. He was a husband, a father, a leader, and still, always, mine. He walked over to me and kissed my forehead. "You still regret it?" he teased. "Selling your virginity to a dark, brooding alpha lord?" I grinned, only that I didn't ask for double the price. He laughed, rich and deep. Then our son ran into his arms and the world, at last, felt whole. The end.